Hi everyone, it's Tonya Gibbs, and today I want to share with you a watercolor card tutorial. This is an Yvonne Blair Art Girls project. Today we are going to make this beautiful watercolor card using one of Yvonne's stamps. You could make this any theme that you would like by switching out the sentiment. I will be using distress markers today to color up my stamp, but you could use any watercolor markers that you wish for this technique. I'm also going to be using abandoned coral, worn lipstick, and peeled paint as my color choices. Again, you could substitute any colors that you wish. Today's featured stamp is going to be the Swirly Vine stamp from Yvonne Blair and Impression Obsession. I will also include a blog post down below in the description box where you can purchase this stamp. Check with your local retailers that carry Impression Obsession stamps, and if they don't, ask them to. Also, Impression Obsession has these stamps where you can purchase them from them directly. So to begin, I have a piece of Canson cold pressed watercolor cardstock at 140-pound bond. I've pre-cut it at 3¼ inches by 5 inches, and I will include these measurements in the accompanying blog post. Now on my stamp I have it on an acrylic block, and I'm coloring the leaves and the stems with the peeled paint marker, and then the bulbs I'm coloring with the worn lipstick marker. I'm using the brush tip of the marker to do this. Then I'm going to pull it off to the side and I'm going to huff onto the stamp to reactivate the ink that has dried. Then I'm going to lay it down on my paper, and I'm going to press evenly all around to make sure I get good coverage. Now if you have some areas that do not press smoothly, don't try to restamp over. Instead, we can just take our fine tip of our marker and draw those areas in later. So don't try to restamp over. You'll get a rocked stamp. Now I'm going to add a little bit of water to a small container and grab a very fine brush, and grabbing a paper towel, I'm going to blot some of that water off on the paper towel. The idea here is to have a moistened brush but not a sopping wet brush. I'm going to start with my leaves, and I'm just going to apply a little bit of liquid there to my leaf area. Remember that watercolor paper is it's like a rag, so it's going to wick moisture in. But the nice thing about watercolor paper versus cardstock is that the water becomes trapped within the fibers of the paper, so it's not going to wick out beyond the space that you add the water to. So the nice thing is that it's gonna become trapped into the areas that you add the water, which is why I like to use watercolor paper versus cardstock here. So you don't get the sloppiness that you get with the cardstock. So as I color these leaves, the water becomes trapped in this area and my pigment doesn't get wicked out. So I'm going to work on one leaf and then move over to another leaf, and it's going to keep my colors from becoming contaminated. And I really love this effect because the pigment becomes trapped in that area. So you'll notice that I color in one specific area and then move on to the next area. Allow it to dry so that I don't contaminate my colors, because if I were to color right up against another area side by side, then the colors would wick because the moisture would begin to run into each other. So now I'm going to go into my flower bulbs and repeating the same process. Now if you feel like you need more water or you need more concentrated pigment, then scribble a little pigment over onto your palette there on the right, and then pick it up with some water and color in. Because I noticed that this particular flower did not have a center bulb per se. It was just drawn out line art. So I wanted it to be a fuller, richer flower, so I went ahead and added a little pigment to my palette. For those of you who are new to my channel, the board that you see here is a cutting board that I've covered with a craft mat from Ranger and taped around to the back. It was an old craft mat that had a hole in it, and it was a way for me to continue to use it. I absolutely love it because now it's living on my desk. So now what I've done is I've taken the worn lipstick, which is, excuse me, the abandoned coral, which is more of that corally color. I've scribbled a little bit on my desk, and I'm adding it to the base of the bulb, and that's just going to give me a warmer color to add a little bit of texture to my bulbs and give them a little, like it looks like another petal coming up from the base. And I'm just dropping puddles of this color right at the base, and it's just going to give like almost like it has an extra petal coming around from the base. This is a great way to take a very simple designed stamp and give it a new look. So I decided I needed another leaf down in the bottom. So all I did was color the leaf section on the stamp and then just stamped another leaf down at the bottom so that it would have the same rough look. And then I took the peeled paint and put it onto my mat there, and I'm coloring it in, and with my marker. And then I've decided to add a few little splatters to give my card base a little bit of texture. So just scribbled a little color there on my mat, watered it down really well with my brush, and then splattered it around. And I really love the look this is getting. It's very simple. So let it dry really well. You didn't see that in frame, but I do want these bulbs to be completely dry before I do this next step, or else I'll get a lot of wicking. So now I'm taking the fine tip of my peeled paint marker, and I'm going into the base of my flowers and just flicking in a few little strokes, and this is giving a beautiful base to all of my flowers as if they are attached to my stems. It's just a little detail, and then I'm going to add a few little veins here to my little leaves that are coming up, and just giving them a little bit of a detail as well. So now it's time to build out my card base. Again, the measurements will all be over on the blog, but I'm just going to use a standard top folding card, which is actually cut to 11 inches by 4¼ inches, and then folded at 5½, so it's top folding. It's just standard white cardstock, and then the top of my card is actually a piece of scrap cut that I found in a My Mind's Eye 6x6 pad. This is the On Trend paper collection. I just pulled out the piece that was white with gold foiling dots. This is again, the On Trend collection, and it was cut at 4¼ by 5½ to fit the very top of the card. And you saw me add a little bit of foam tape there to give a little depth to my watercoloring piece there. If you wanted this to be completely flat, you could skip the step of the foam tape if you had to mail this. So now I've pulled out a notebook and I'm writing out Happy Mother's Day so I could get some visual reference to, one, how many letters I had, because I want to write this onto a banner and I don't want to run out of space. I'm notorious for that. The other reason is I'm also awful about missing a letter when I'm handwriting something, so this gives me a visual reference to how many letters are in Happy Mother's Day, and also gives me a visual reference to don't forget a letter. So you saw me count it out. There's 16 letters, so roughly in the middle of my banner, I want to make sure the 8th letter is somewhat towards the center of that area so I don't run out of space. So I've drawn a line to give myself a visual reference as to where the center should be. And then I lined up my banner with a line on my mat on the grid. So that's just a little tip for you guys. And then, of course, I wrote just a little bit smaller than I thought I would. So to fill in that extra little space there, I just drew a little heart with my abandoned coral pen, and that just filled in the space beautifully. So I added a little foam tape to the back of my banner so it sat up a little taller on my card base, and there's the outside of my card. So for the inside of the card, I decided to go ahead and add a little bit of flair as well, because I wanted to put something on the inside. Now I forgot that I was zoomed in kind of tight, so you may not see some of this, but I pulled out the stamp one more time, and this time I used the Distress inks to stamp up my stamp. I'm using the Tattered Rose color, and then I'm just going to ink it up and then stamp it off onto a piece of paper and then stamp it onto my card. So this is the second generation. It's very pale and hard to see in camera, so I'm going to pull it up. I wanted it to be super soft so that I could write my message over the top of the inking. It's like a watermark. And then at the very bottom in my handwriting, I'm going to write "Love you bunches." So the outside of the card says Happy Mother's Day, and then the inside of the card says "Love you bunches." So you can see where you could very easily substitute out this particular card with anything. You could make this a happy birthday, a Mother's Day, a sympathy, thank you, anything you wish, just by simply substituting out a sentiment. So if you're not comfortable with your handwriting, you could easily stamp a sentiment on any of these, but super simple, easy way to make a card. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you've enjoyed this production. If you have, please make sure you leave me a thumbs up, a comment, and share this with a friend. Don't forget to go over and check out that blog post for all of the measurements and the details and links on where you can purchase this stamp. Thanks again, guys.